Greetings gastronauts, this is KeefCooks, I'm Keef, and today I'm going to show you a Northern English traditional dish. I'm going to show you how to make a meat and potato pie. So I've had a couple of requests to do this, one from Bush 1149 and another one from Anne Kane. And I seem to remember, well, maybe 6 months, a year ago, there was a third one from somebody who wanted me to make a Hollands meat and potato pie. Actually, they call it potato meat pie. And I said, no, I don't think I can, because, you know, you need a factory and a source of really dodgy meat. And I'm sorry if that offends the entire county of Lancashire, you know, because Hollands Pies are made there and they are a bit of a national, well, they are a bit of a county religion. But, you know, that's the way it is. Anyway, so I've got one. I'm going to do a very quick taste test just to find out what it's all about. It's got a scary list of ingredients, and the meat turns out to be beef, 10%. So yeah, kind of what you might expect. But I have this kind of thing about unnamed meat. As you may know, I'm a big fan of Terry Pratchett's Discworld books, and he has a lot of food related stuff in his books, incidental, but you know. Whenever he mentions a cafe menu, it will have you know, meat pie, unnamed meat, a penny, named meat, tuppence. And so, you know, whenever I see unnamed meat, it kind of worries me. And speaking of Discworld cafes, I don't know if you're familiar with the Discworld, but there are dwarfs and trolls and all kinds of things. And the dwarves' cuisine, predominantly, this is what they like. It's rat. And so every Discworld chef needs a tea towel like this that gives you a plumber's guide to how to butcher a rat. Not that I'm ever likely to, but just in case I need to. There you go. Right, enough waffling, let's try this pie. So, yeah, I mean, it's not the most appetising looking thing in the world. And, you know, in the product photo and in the flesh, my goodness. Well, I don't like to diss things too much. So we'll give this thing 2.5 minutes in the microwave, and we'll have a little taste. And here it is. Well, it might not look much, but it certainly smells nice. Oh, come on, guys. There's nothing in it. There's just this kind of grey slurry. Hot grey slurry. Oh dear. Sorry, Lancashire. It's just not a thing. I'm sure we can do better. Okay, to make a pie you need pastry. So, well, actually I'm going to do my hot water pastry recipe, which is, it's perfect for pies, even though a lot of online recipes use suet pastry, which is very nice, but I'm not doing it. And Hollands, on their pie marketing spiel, say they use short crust, which is a bit odd. But anyway, this will work, this will be grand. So you want 250 grams of plain all-purpose flour. Okay, 257. 125 ml of warm water and 125 grams of lard. If you can't get lard, you can use butter or shortening. They'll work just as well. So you want to pop that on the stove and melt the lard on medium heat. You don't want it to boil. And whack a teaspoon of salt in with the flour. The lard's all melty melty, so we'll just pour, well, half of that in with the flour to start with, and then the rest of it. Mixy mixy, stirry stirry. There we go. Hot water pastry, another of the world's easiest things. So I'm just going to wrap that in plastic film and stick it in the fridge to cool down for about half an hour while we get on with the filling. A lot of people think just because it's called hot water pastry you've got to use it while it's hot. I don't think this is the case. It works fine when it's cold and it's easier to work with. It doesn't burn your fingers. Okay, chill. Right, to start making the filling, I'm going to cook the meat first because it needs the most time. So I've got a big chunk of beef, I've got a couple of medium onions and a litre of beef stock made up from a couple of cubes. Also need a good grind of pepper and a teaspoon of parsley. So first thing to do, chop the onions, peel the onions and chop them with your lovely sharp knife. Now I'm going to use my pressure cooker because, you know, I don't want to wait around for a couple of hours. So this would actually take about really 2.5 hours for the beef to get tender. Pressure cooker, it'll take 20 minutes. So I'll pop the onions in there and the stock. I'll just pop that on the stove to get it going. Okay, the meat, I don't think I mentioned, this is 700 grams of brisket. You can use any cheap cut of meat, that, you know, chuck steak, whatever. It's not worth paying a huge amount of money for. So we need to cut this into slightly smaller than bite-sized chunks. Although if you were going the Hollands route, you might cut them into 2mm squares and then throw them away. Strange. Probably about 1/2 inch centimetre sort of cubes. Kind of like that. Because big lumps of meat in a individual pie, they kind of stick through the lid and you know, they're too big. This reminds me of when I used to make pies in Madrid, where, you know, quite often I would have like 5 kilos of beef to chop up, and it could take hours and hours. Anyway, there we have it. So I'll pop that in with the onions and the stock, some pepper and a teaspoon of parsley. Some people would say I should have coated the beef in seasoned flour and then fried it off and browned it. I say nah. For this kind of pie, it's not right. So when the pan comes up to pressure, turn down the heat a bit and let that cook for 20 minutes. If you're not using a pressure cooker, in a normal saucepan, you would just simmer with a lid on for 2.5 hours, but keep stirring it and checking it and topping up the water if it's looking like you're losing it. Now you want the same weight of potatoes as you had of beef, and I just want to peel them and chop them into cubes. Maybe a bit larger than the beef cubes. Okay, so here's my spuds. I've got a pan of hot water coming to the boil, so I'm just going to throw the spuds in. And they should cook in about 10 minutes because they're cut into small chunks. Okay, so I think the spuds are done. Yeah, they're done. And that actually took 15 minutes, not the 10 minutes that I promised. Sorry. So I'm going to drain those off and pop them in with the meat and the gravy. Ooh yeah, looking good. So I'm just going to taste that for seasoning. Yep, that's nice. But the gravy's runny and it needs to be a bit thicker, so I'll just sift in some flour and let that cook for a few minutes and that will thicken it. Okay, that looks pretty good, so we'll turn that off and let it cool down completely before we stick it in the pie. Right, the pastry's ready, the filling's ready, so you want to get your oven preheating to 200 degrees Celsius if it's a fan oven, or 220 if it isn't. And gas mark, I'll have to look it up, probably 7 or 8, it's hot. So you want a rolling pin, you want a knife, you want a bowl, you want some pie dishes, and you want some flour. So these pie dishes, I'll put a link, because people are always asking me where I got these from. It's a company called Masterclass, and they did come originally, like, you know, over 5 years ago. They had a very tough non-stick coating, but I've kind of used them on an almost industrial scale, so that's gone. But yeah, they're perfect for an individual pie. And I've just lightly oiled inside each one. And this bowl is for cutting the tops, and it's just the right size for those tins. So you want a load of worktop on your flour. You want a load of flour on your worktop. A bit on your rolling pin as well. I'm hoping I'll be able to get 4 pies out of this amount of pastry. So I'll just cut about 1/3 of that off for our lids, put that to one side and roll it. So it wants to be like 3 or 4 millimeters thick, just under 1/4 of an inch. And just stamp out your lids. Now get the rest of your pastry and the offcuts from the lids. Squish that together and roll that flat as well. There we go, nice thin sheet of pastry. Now I'm just going to pop some flour in the pie tins, because I know I've oiled them, but I find that the flour gives a good release. Right, so just cut your pastry into quarters. Take a pie dish and whack it in. And take another dish and press it down. I used to do this, I would have a stack of pies about 10 or 12 high in the olden days. There we go. Alright, and then just trim off the edges. And a bit of spare pastry to do with what you will. What I normally do is keep it in the fridge and then throw it away after a week or two, having not used it. Now you want a bowl of cold water to use as glue to stick the top on, and a little bit of milk to use as a glaze. Now normally I would use egg wash, but I think every meat and potato pie I've ever seen hasn't had a shiny golden top, it's had a dull brown top. So I think that's more authentic. And you need your filling. And all you do is just put a good dollop of that into each one. Not too much, because the pie will boil over, or overboil. There is a technical word in pie making for what happens when your filling leaks out. And you'll notice that the filling is quite sticky. There's not a lot of actual sauce going on in there, and that's perfectly right. And then just moisten the rim of each pie with water and bung a lid on and press it down all around with your thumbs. And then I just kind of lift it up a little bit, because you know, it will tend to stick on that rim if you don't do this. It just makes it easier to get them out. And then to finish them off, you just glaze them, paint them with the milk. Right, now that goes in the oven for 25 minutes. And one thing I forgot to mention, the filling, I actually made twice as much as I needed for those 4 pies. So maybe I'll do another 4, or maybe I'll just have it as some kind of stew. I don't know yet. Okay, timer's just gone off, so I'll get the pies out at the oven. Ooh yeah. So we need to leave those to cool down for about 10 minutes, so until they're cool enough to handle and I can get them out of the tins. And I did actually turn them around halfway through because they weren't browning evenly. Right, I think that's yeah, cool enough to handle without injuring myself. So we'll just well, it is quite hot. And just pop them out. So leave them on a wire rack to cool down, and that'll stop your bottoms going soggy. Let's get this on a plate and do the stuff. Well, I don't know about you, but I think that's one good looking pie. So let's open them up. Oh yeah. And you serve that with peas. So these are marrowfat peas out of a can. You could also use processed peas or mushy peas, but really not Ponzi quick frozen garden peas, because they're just wrong for this. And another thing that's right for this, Bisto gravy.
Ooh,
right, taste test time with, what's your name again?
Mrs. KeefCooks. Okay, so many cameras. I don't know. Oh, that one's looking at the food.
Yeah, that one's looking.
Hello, people.
And the fluffy thing up there is picking up the sound.
So what have we got? Is that marrowfat peas?
Yeah, babe.
Yeah.
We don't mess about.
Yeah.
We know our traditions. Now, the question is, will it be as good or better than a Hollands pie?
I'm not in a position to judge because I didn't do that taste test.
Look at you.
I haven't got some pastry yet. You know, I love pastry. I enjoy the fancy stuff, but the comfort food. Really. Oh, this is lovely.
Oh.
It really is.
Oh.
We don't entirely agree on pastry.
Don't we?
Nah, not always. But I like this. Do you like this?
Yeah.
Good. It's kind of crispy here. And all squidgy at the bottom. I might even leave you some.
It's alright, I've got another 3.
Yeah, muck it up.
I think we'll stop now.
This went down your pinny, not your shirt.
That's what pinny's for. Okay, the pinny for. Sorry.
Bye. Done?
Okay.
Okay, well I said goodbye. I'm still carrying on eating.
Right.
Okay. Because I haven't had my lunch yet.
Okay. What's it called? Meat potato pie.
Yeah, not potato and meat pie.
Yeah.
Meat and potato.
And if you enjoyed it, give it a like, share, subscribe, become a patron, make a donation, all that grand stuff.
And they don't have to be individual pies either, do they? You can make a big one in a rectangular dish.
Yeah.
And that's really nice when there's everyone sitting around the table waiting for their bit.
So thanks for watching, and see you next time.